Nearly 200 years ago, this land was very different. In our area, we have buffalo roaming, forests everywhere, and Native Americans were living here. One tribe called the Miami Indians had lived in Montpelier years ago.
The Miami Indians lived in Wickiups. It was a group of bent sticks covered in animal fur. They spoke the Miami, Illinois language. The word Miami comes from the Miami, Illinois word Miamia, which means allies. They were big on farming. They grew things like squash, beans, and maize. The Miami Indians did not dress in more paint and animal skins. They dressed more normal. They got their clothes by trading with the Europeans.
In the summer, the Miamis came to Montpelier to hunt buffalo. Their main village was Kikianga, which is Fort Wayne today. There were many Miami chiefs such as Little Turtle, Richardville, and Francis Godfrey.
He was the last war chief for the Miami Indians. Chief Godfrey was born in 1788 in Kikianga. His mom was a Miami Indian and his dad was French, so he was half French and half Miami Indian, which is called Métis. Godfrey had 2 wives and they were good friends. He also had children with both wives.
He had 2 wives, one from Blackford and one from Mount Pleasant. He was 6 foot tall and 300 to 350 pounds. Francis Godfrey was a big guy. Godfrey fought in the Battle of the Mississinawa in December of 1812. Francis Godfrey died from natural causes, and he was buried in Peru.
The Indians lived on the Godfrey Reserve. They lived here before they built the reserve. 6 trails led into the reserve, and you can still see one of them today. The government also built Godfrey a pretty nice brick house. They got the bricks from a brick kiln that was also on the reserve. Some other things that were on the reserve are a trading post, a blacksmith shop, other log cabins, and a government house because a government agent had to be there at all times. There were also 30 to 60 graves. In 1846, the Indians left. They didn't stay here all the time anyway. This was just like their summer home. But in 1846, they left for good. Today, we have the Indian statue to remember them.
The Indian statue was given to the city of Montpelier in 1984. The statue is 20 feet tall and 1,000 pounds. It is important that we remember the Miami people who lived here before us.
Abel Baldwin was born on March 19, 1791 in Windsor County, Cavendish, Vermont. Abel Baldwin was a farmer.
Abel Baldwin was also a war veteran of the War of 1812. 5 of his family members were Revolutionary War soldiers. In 1836, Abel came to Indiana. He traveled here with a group of people. He traveled here 806 miles from Vermont to Montpelier. Abel got here by walking, by steamboat, railroad, horseback, and stagecoach. Abel had a dream about going west, and he pursued that dream.
He sold his land and moved west. It took him 3 days to sell off his land.
When they got to Indiana, they settled near the Salamone River. He bought 40 acres of land and paid only $200. That is a lot cheaper than today.
Montpelier started on March 16, 1836, and at that time, this area was just swamps, trees, and forests. That meant that these early settlers had to cut down trees, burn stumps, and build homes. They had to clear farmland.
Montpelier is named after his home state's capital. He married a girl named Rhoda and had 2 children. When he plotted Montpelier, he put 4 parks in the center of town. These are called the Four Corners Parks. The parks are still standing today.
Abel Baldwin died on August 16, 1839. He was only 48 when he died.
There was no cause of his death. He just died abruptly. Everyone was devastated.
After Abel Baldwin died, many of the settlers moved west or back to Vermont.
Abel Baldwin was an important part of our community. We would never be a city without him.
Montpelier used to be a peaceful town until the oil boom happened. Then our city, Montpelier, boomed. Everything in the city grew. The oil boom started in 1890. People in Montpelier found oil under the ground. They got the oil out by using these machines called oil wells.
The oil wells be powered by a steam engine. One steam engine could power many oil wells at once. Some people would burn the oil that they got to power the steam engine. A piston would go in the ground and let out the air. When it would come up, it pulls out the oil. One oil well could produce 200 gallons a day. Many people did not have cars or could not afford fuel. Also, some people use the oil for their heat in the house.
There were 1,400 oil wells in Montpelier. When the people of Montpelier found oil, the population grew by a lot. During the boom, the population grew up to 5,000. A lot of buildings were built in the oil boom, like the State Factory, the racetrack, the doctor's office, the glass and steel factory, the barber shop, grocery stores, drugstores, and the Columbia Hotel.
The Montpelier gas and oil boom happened around 1890. Montpelier was part of the Trenton gas field.
Most of the oil in Indiana came from Blackford County. In fact, Montpelier had so much oil, one well exploded for 24 hours straight. There were oil tanks in Montpelier. Oil tanks are large storage containers that were used to carry a lot of oil. Since we had so much oil back then, our city's nickname was Oil City. Oil companies were big in Montpelier. In fact, one of the oil mining companies used to sit where Montpelier Elementary School is now. The only reason people came to Montpelier was to get jobs and to become rich because of the oil.
Some gas and oil companies piped private oil to some homes. Some oil was used for cheap heating that would put black smoke out into the air. The oil boom ended in the early 1900s. Then everybody left Montpelier and moved to find more oil. Then everything went back to normal.
After about 20 years, the oil boom slowly went away. In the 1920s, the oil boom vanished. The people who worked in the oil fields went to places like Texas because there was more oil there.
The oil workers badly needed haircuts. Their hair looked horrid from working on the oil rigs. The oil boom was important to our history because it increased our population and brought new businesses such as a barbershop. Elmer Somerville purchased a property for $1,000. He started the barber shop in 1895. After the oil boom, a line of oil lit up the barber shop pole. On the barber pole, the colors represented different things. Red represents blood because there were no dentists back then, and people would also get their teeth pulled at the barber shop. Blue represents iodine. The pole spun because it looks as if blood was flowing through the body. Elmer Somerville sold it to Virgil Marine in 1947. Glenn Boyce was the third owner of the barber shop. Today, the owner of the barber shop is Bob Bodust. He purchased it in 1998. Even though there were a lot of owners at the barber shop, it still sits in the original spot at 218 South Main Street.
One of Indiana's most important natural resources are rocks. In the late 1800s, Montpelier had their own stone quarry. A stone quarry is where they break up limestone into powder.
Most of the time, they break up rocks into minerals. They make mines to find other types of rock to break up. They mostly blow up rocks to make them smaller. Sometimes they would dig very deep and try to find bedrock. Balti Stone Quarry was founded in the 1890s. A man named W.D.D. Cook bought the equipment for the stone quarry for Michael Balti, a man from Fort Wayne. Balti Stone Quarry was owned by Michael Balti. Balti also owned an oil company. There were also 4 oil rigs at the stone quarry. After 20 years that Balti owned the quarry, it grew considerably. Balti's stone quarry was seriously damaged in the flood of 1913. All the oil rigs blew up. They ran out of oil, and they also ran out of limestone. Balti's was not happy at all, so they decided to make it a lake by not pumping it out anymore and letting it fill up with water. They decided to call it Lake Blue Water. The only reason they called it Lake Blue Water was because the water was clear. It had 1 big lake and 2 ponds. It was huge. It took up 7 acres of land. Lake Blue Water was used for many things. In 1926, Miss Indiana was crowned at Lake Blue Water. Paul Whaley was from Montpelier and won almost every boat race held there. There was supposed to be a golf course, a tennis court, and a horseback riding trail. There were 2 floating swimming pools. One was deeper than the other. They made a skating rink by the dance pavilion. The contractors expected it to be the Disney World of the Midwest. Very bad things happened to Lake Blue Water. 1, the entire fish population ran out. 2, it cost way too much money to make all these wonderful plans happen. There was a fire in the dance pavilion. Lake Blue Water was also flooded. Now there's little fun at Lake Blue Water. There aren't even the floating swimming pools there anymore. Now people just fish or boat there.
Cheney Hardware was one of the many businesses that were brought upon Montpelier during the time it was a boomtown. Charles H. Cheney and A.H. Bonham started Cheney Hardware from another family-owned hardware store that was there before theirs. This building was built in 1894, before it was Cheney Hardware. It was Saunders and Johnson. In that time, there wasn't much entertainment, so Cheney wanted to do something about it. The town was getting very rich, but was a bit boring in some mines. Mr. Cheney himself owned 5 oil wells, so the oil gave him money to bring in entertainment to the city. He and his employees built an opera house called the Grand. An opera house is like a movie theater, but human acted. Sometimes they'd show plays called vaudevilles. This was a very popular thing back then, and a lot of people came to opera houses. There was still a hardware store below the opera house. It was located on Main Street. This place sold all kinds of things like nails, hunting, and fishing licenses, along with knives and daisy rifles, even dynamite. The building is still standing in Montpelier. Today it is getting older, just waiting and waiting for an owner.
The Columbia Hotel was the biggest hotel in Montpelier. When it was first built, people from all over the country came to it. Some people loved it so much that they stayed there permanently. The Columbia Hotel opened Thanksgiving Day, 1892. The Columbia Hotel was located on Main Street in Montpelier. There were 52 rooms in the hotel. It was very busy from the first day to the last day. There was a store on the first floor of the Columbia Hotel called Horton's Newsstand. This newsstand was opened up 1908. At the newsstand, they sold candy and chocolate-coated caramels. The owner, Mr. Horton, needed more space, so he moved his business to the Webb Building located on Huntington Street. There were some businesses on the first floor of the Columbia Hotel. Not only was there a newsstand, but there was a place where you could go and buy drinks. There was an eat-in dining room right by the place you could go and get drinks. A barber shop was in the basement of the hotel. They also used the barber shop as a place where you could go and get bathed. There were 6 shoe shine stands, and men also went to this place to get a shave. There was a bombing at the Columbia Hotel. It happened after midnight on January 9, 1924. The bomb knocked out the windows of the hotel and on the buildings on the other side of the street. Only one person got hurt, Sheriff Goodrich, because the bomb was placed behind a safe. There was a strike in 1923 when the workers at the manufacturing company and the National Steel Company thought they weren't getting enough money. So the company brought in some people who wanted to work for them and housed them in the Columbia Hotel. So the strikers got mad and bombed the hotel. They wanted to hurt the strikebreakers, but all they hurt was a sheriff's deputy. There were a lot of people that went to jail for the bombing. To be exact, there were 48 men who went to the jail for the tragedy. The people who were making the plans were Bert McCulloch, William Davis, Chester Benner, and Bert Rees. The Blackford jail was so full that they had to split the jailbirds in half and send one half to the Penfield jail and then keep the other half in the Blackford County. Eventually, they closed the Columbia Hotel and then tore it down. The Columbia Hotel closed down when it had a fire in 1930, but they fixed it up and it became a whole bunch of different business. After the Columbia Hotel was getting old, they decided that they were going to tear it down. They tore it down in 1987. I wish that the Columbia Hotel was still there and we could see it and what it looked like inside.
The history of racing in Montpelier is important. It is important because it brought over 30,000 people around the country to watch the races because it was one of the fastest horse racing tracks in America. The horse racing brought famous people and famous horses to our city. Also, the Montpelier school mascot was the Pacers because of the racing history and also because there were pacer horses that raced here. Hal Kelly bought the track off Thomas Neal. Neal started the track in 1902 and Kelly bought it in 1923. Neal raced first-class horses for trotting. He also got dirt from France and it made the track faster and fancier. They raced harness horses. A tornado came through Montpelier in the early 1920s and leveled the grandstands and the stables. But after that, they had more horses than ever. Even after they built stables, they used garages because there were so many horses. Then it opened up again on Sunday, June 3rd, 1985. Both horses and race cars raced during this time. Race cars raced on Thursdays and horses raced the rest of the week. The first winner was Joe Smith with the horse Creed Atlas. The track today only has 5 sets of grandstands and instead of racing horses, they now race cars. They only race on Saturday and they have a very small track. It is now called the Montpelier Motor Speedway. I wish Montpelier was still a booming town so that we could bring back horse racing.
Back in 1904, transportation was different how it is today. Everyone drives cars now, but they used to ride on interurban trains. The interurbans ran off electricity. There were electrified cables above the train that made the trains go. They were used statewide in Indiana and improved the lives of country folks by allowing them to ride miles into cities or towns. The Union Traction Company came to Montpelier in 1903. This gave the people of Montpelier an easier way to travel. The Montpelier station was located on Main Street. The interurbans went many places. It went to Fort Wayne, connecting to Bluffton, Montpelier, Hartford City, Muncie, and Anderson. The seats were a leathery fabric, which was very comfy for most of the passengers, and an interurban train could hold just about 40 passengers. Sadly, the interurbans had to go away someday. In the 1930s, the last passenger train left Montpelier, going south on Main Street. When the interurban cars left, they were sold as scrap metal to the military to make army tanks for World War II. They also left because more and more people had cars and were on the road, so it's hard for the interurbans to move around.
Andrew Carnegie gave 90% of his wealth to people so they could build the libraries. He got rich by building the J. Edgar Thompson steel mill. Then he sold the company for $250 million. Before he died, he gave his fortune to build over 2,500 public libraries. The Montpelier Public Library was built in 1907 and was built on Main Street. The library has been here for over 100 years. The first president of the Montpelier Library Board was Dr. F. M. Reynolds. The library is important to Montpelier because it is a place where people can go to learn. The Library of Montpelier is still standing today, and it is by the Montpelier School. A lot of people love to go to the library.
You have seen a light rain, but you haven't seen 11 inches of rain in 3 days. A lot of people did in the flood of 1913. It started because of a big rainstorm. Most of Indiana was affected, and part of Ohio was too. This flood was the record flood for Indiana. At Montpelier, the Salamone River made an island of the municipal waterworks. The White River was 23 inches above the danger line. People were canoeing to get to places. Before one of the interurban tracks were damaged by the rising waters, people had to get out of the train that was going to cross the track and had to crawl or walk across the non-steady track. The city's sewage system was clogged, so the water was being blocked from draining. Our city lost power and water because the power and water company was down by the flooded river. People say that it was very terrifying and sad. There were people stuck in houses that lost their lives. There were people that had to try to get people out of their houses with rowboats. Some people did not know how to drive the rowboats, so some people lost their lives by tipping the rowboats over and drowning. They thought that there were 10,000 to 15,000 people dead at first, but they were wrong. In Indiana and Ohio, there were 350 people died in the whole flood. No one died in Montpelier.
On March 21, 1916, a water cyclone hit the town of Montpelier.
The cyclone or tornado was about 5 miles wide.
The cyclone hit Montpelier before midnight on March 21st. There were many buildings damaged. The National Steel Casting Company had over $40,000 in damage.
Also, it demolished the shovel works, which was located on the southwest part of the city. It also hit the cup and metal works, costing over $10,000 to repair.
The grandstand of the racetrack was ruined, and the cyclone also hit the sides of the post office. Many barns in the city were destroyed. The storm killed farm animals such as cows, and a church was destroyed.
It did not destroy any homes, but it damaged many of them. The tornado moved from north to south, and it was so strong it drove pieces of stone into telephone poles.
The 4-year-old daughter of John Osbach was killed when his house fell down during the storm. It was made that only one person was killed.
The Great Depression was a thing that started in the 1920s and ended in the 1930s. The part of the Great Depression I'm going to talk about is the one that hit Montpelier soil. The place that was worst in Montpelier was the west side of Montpelier. It was horrible. Children would work for just enough money to get their family by. People would even go out during the night and take the coal off the railroad, even though that was illegal. But during these times, people would do anything to keep their family warm, fed, and hydrated. One important event that happened during the Great Depression era in Montpelier was when John Dillinger robbed the Montpelier Bank. It was an 8-day robbery streak. The streak included the following banks: Racine, Decatur, Illinois, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Bluffton, and Ohio. It was said that he was not rough with his hostages. He was actually nice. Dillinger robbed the Montpelier Bank in 1931 along with his 3-person gang, 4 including him. While they were coming to Montpelier to rob the bank, they stopped at a filling station to get gas. I interviewed a woman who said they were the fanciest, most well-dressed people she had ever saw. The bank had a president at that time who was Mr. Tewksbury. It was a quick robbery. The Yeggman robbers were only in the bank for 10 minutes. The weird part about it is that it was not the first robbery to occur at the Montpelier National Bank. There was another robbery a few years earlier that happened, and the robbers left with their guns blazing while bullets rained down like hail. Now, the Dillinger robbery happened with not one bullet being fired, leaving everybody okay. Dillinger left with between $10,000 and $12,000.
History is always being made by people all over the earth, like Kevin Ford, who is from Montpelier. Kevin Ford was born on July 7, 1960, in Portland, Indiana, but he considers Montpelier his hometown. He lived on South Main Street in Montpelier. Kevin Ford studied aerospace engineering. He graduated from Blackford High School in 1989. He graduated from the University of Florida. He was selected to be an astronaut in 2000. Kevin was a pilot for Space Shuttle mission STS-128. He has a license to fly airplanes, gliders, helicopters, and hot air balloons. He is a pilot instructor for the F-15, F-16, and gliders. Kevin Ford's concrete monument was put in the middle of Montpelier in 2011.
When we found it, it had that look, and we choose just kind of leave it that look. Originally, our forefathers, this was all painted. It was, you tell the color, and that's what was downstairs. These walls.
The reason we still have these old buildings is because we take care of them. We put a lot of old buildings to new uses. Some of the old buildings we have now are used as homes, but some old buildings are not being saved and are just left to rot. I believe this is a very sad act to our community.
That's what research is about. You find, you go in, you read the books, you look at stuff, and if you find a citation.
The Historical Society is helping keep history alive today. They were founded on June 13, 1969. After being decommissioned for a year and a half, they decided they needed the society to help preserve old artifacts. The society is not only preserving buildings, but artifacts too. People are trying to put old buildings to new uses. That is what people are doing to the old church building. This building is located beside the Montpelier Library.
This building was going to be torn down, but the people of Montpelier decided that this is an important piece of history.
18, and so Main Street was difficult for them to get down very far.
Saving our history is very important. It provides many things for our community. The old buildings in our city tell us a story of the past.
The entire world because it's a really awesome building material.
But after that, they couldn't even get to them that way. They just had to let it go until the waters receded. Now, water, not to say that there weren't problems.
I do think that one day one person can change the way people think about history. And personally, I think it's our class because we are not those who hate history. We are ones who love it a lot.
Nice. His little brother's right up there. And the left of the voice of their names on the wall, so you can see where we went out around. I'm glad you asked that, young man. Can I reverse that on you? Yeah. I'm going to reverse it on you. I'm going to challenge you and the rest of your class and see if you can find stuff.
If people don't know and learn about history, then they can't teach people, and pretty soon nobody will know.
We've went on trips to learn not just words from the mouth, but physical history as well. If we stop talking about history now, there may not be any someday. That's why we need to learn about history so we can tell future generations.
Oh, this looks cool. My old time, it looks awesome. This is part of my research too.
Looks like they're taking the self-guided tour.
If we don't preserve history, then everything's lost. History protects our future.
History is fun because we get to learn history that nobody talks about. We get to know things that other people don't know about our city. It's the older people who know a lot about history, but now we know it too. We probably know more than some adults. Also, if we told our kids and they told their kids and so on, we would be the ones to extend the history of our city.
When you were young, you lost on everyone. Then you closed your eyes and said your goodbyes. In a year or 10 I will be there. I will come for you when you are on your own. On a chair in a room with no one there, I will touch your hand and say I understand. What we lost was equal to the cost of my skin on yours, and say you